Good Friday morning. It's WKRK Radio in Murphy, North Carolina, 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide at country.am. Tim Radford here, along with Sheriff Derek Palmer, and happy non-snow Friday to you.
Happy non-snow Friday to you, too.
Yeah. Derek was here last week. And
cleaning out your satellite dish while you was home in the bed.
Home in the bed, eating chocolate chips and beets. Not together, but that's all I could find to eat. Yeah. And I really appreciate your taking the time to sweep that out.
Nah, that was no problem. I felt so sorry for Donna Lynn. She drug that big broom out, and it was way bigger than she was, and I knew it'd probably topple her over.
She's only this tall.
Yeah, she's about 4 foot.
Hopefully she's not listening right now.
So I told her, I said, don't do that. I said, I'll go out there and do that for you.
So I really appreciate it. That was a great public service, and that just shows. And I posted the picture on Facebook, and you got tons of people just saying how much they appreciate you.
Yeah.
And I also want to say hats off to Bram over at Red Brick Deli. He says, just call me next time, and I'll sweep it out for you so you can just walk across the street. And so it's just good people like yourself and Bram and just our whole community that just makes me love living here because I did – it got full that afternoon again after you swept it off, and I noticed that Dustin looked at the picture. Dustin Smith, he said you missed a spot.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. Yeah, I won't have to get on to him for not coming here and sweeping your satellite dish off.
That's right. Yeah, I'll put him on my call list.
Right.
But, yeah, I tried it down my hill, and I did slide a little bit, but no casualties. Were there many accidents that you are aware of, 911?
There was a few accidents. It wasn't outrageous. It wasn't really like a normal snow event. I think one of the things that helped was the ground was warm when the snow started laying, so the pavement was warm and those things. So by the time they brined the pavement and it being warm anyway, we really didn't have a whole lot of issues on the main roads.
Yeah, the main roads, I was impressed how good shape they were. Just the back roads and people's residential hills and things like that were the slick spots.
Right. And we didn't have a whole lot of accidents on the main highways and main roads. There was most of the accidents we had were like just sliding out of the road and ditches and things of that nature. So it was a relatively good event for a snow event.
Well, that's good, and I'm glad that's in our past now. And
well, now listen, we were talking this morning, and some of those people listening on the radio can clarify this a little bit, and they call in on Party Line here in a little while and let you know if they know something different. But I was always told growing up that when the first snow fell, however long the snow laid on the ground was how many snow days you would have for that winter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so we're a week into it now, and we're still got snow on the ground. So I don't know if that means we're going to have 7 significant snows or more than that or whenever it goes away. So I guess we'll have to keep track of that this year and find out.
You just turned my hair grayer by talking about that.
Well, I was telling Tim, I like snow. I like to see it fall. I think it's beautiful. I like to watch it fall. But once it's done snowing, once the snow quits falling, then I'm ready for it to leave then. I'm ready for it just to get out.
As a kid, I loved snow. You know, it means that we got to get out of school and go sledding down the hill. And I remember one time, I might have watched National Lampoon's Vacation and used a dishpan and oiled it up one time and go sliding down the hill.
Yeah.
And that was fun. But you know my favorite part of snow?
What's that?
Snow cream.
I do. I like snow cream.
I haven't had snow cream in years, and I know you're not supposed to make it from the first snow. Is what I've always heard anyway. But I think they make snow cream flavored ice cream now. I may have to check that out.
They do. I've actually bought some before. It's not as good as homemade, but
that homemade is good stuff.
You can use as much vanilla and homemade snow as you want. So you can make it whatever flavor you want to make it.
All right. Let's see. This past week, we had some different goings on.
Right.
I was there at Murphy First Baptist Church, and Roger Williams had done his internet and cell phone safety seminar.
And I think John Heinzman was there also.
Yes, John Heinzman, the assistant district attorney. And they both did a good job talking, and we filmed that and put it on Facebook. Actually, we posted it on our YouTube channel for Roger, and shared that on our Facebook page. And it was really interesting to see And it was a situation where Roger had slideshows and movies, and the one bad thing is the camera could not capture the slideshows very well because of the backlighting of the screens. But I think most people got the information, and he was talking to both adults and children and how to monitor cell phone activity with your kids. And I think one thing that was important is have your kids understand that they sit down together and look at it. It's not you're going behind the kid's back, but they understand that property belongs to the parent.
Well, I'm not trying to tell anybody else how to parent their children. I'm just the way we did it at my home is our children growing up, there was no such thing as having their own privacy, especially when it came to cell phones and those type of things. Any application they had of our children growing up, whether it was Facebook or at the time was MySpace and some of those other things that was out there, then Instagram, Snapchats, and all that kind of stuff came later. But when our kids were growing up, if they had an account, we had a password for it. But like you say, it wasn't sneaking around. It was ever so often, not every day, but ever so often, me or my wife would say, bring me your cell phones.
This is the way it is. It's going to be.
And they would bring the cell phones, and we would sit there and we'd log into their accounts and look through it and see what they were doing, who they were talking to, who their friends were, those type of things. And our kids knew that. They knew that was part of the deal of getting the phone. And so, like I say, I know that when kids grow up, especially as they get older, then you have to let go of the reins more and more and give them more and more privacy and those type of things. But there's no reason in the world why an elementary school child or a middle school child especially needs to have an account, some privacy and stuff to where you don't know what's happening and you don't know what's going on.
That's the age where they're wanting to experiment with more things that they shouldn't experiment. And one of the parts of the presentation was just seeing the faces and names of some of the child predators here in Cherokee County. And we hear all the news about all these horrible crimes all over the country, but when a sexual predator is chatting with someone online in Cherokee County and they drive for hours to get here to meet that 14-year-old or 13-year-old child, and they find out, I've been chatting with Roger Williams this whole time. And
it's kind of a letdown for them sometimes.
That is a letdown. As Roger said, this gray-headed fat man, old fat man, they find out that's who they've been chatting with for months. And they actually found, but that's the situation where you don't know who you're communicating with online. If they can send pictures of someone that's not them, and they develop this trust. And they had this one presentation where they had the parents there, and this one person who was well over 18, he was chatting with folks, and then he would meet them out in a park, and then you see the girl come up to him, and then the parents come out about, what are you doing? You don't know who this person is. So it was a very powerful presentation, and I encourage anybody who wants to watch that about how to keep yourself and kids safe, just go to our Facebook page, click on the just click on the latest few days of posts.
I think that was Wednesday, wasn't it?
I think so.
Within the last couple of days. There's a lot more of those type of things happen in Cherokee County than people realize that happens. One of the things I try to remind people is not everything we do, not every arrest we make gets a press release and gets posted online. Sometimes things don't get press releases because it's an ongoing investigation and things are still happening. Sometimes they don't get press releases because of victims that are of a sensitive nature, that really we can't say a whole lot because we would expose the victim and publicize the victim. So some of those things don't get releases done. And even like with our drug cases and drug charges, we don't do press releases on all of those because we would just jam up your news feed every day with all the drug arrests and all the stuff that our officers do. So we try to be pick and choose a little bit about that as to what's newsworthy and what that we think people will ask about and what the media would ask about and those type of things is kind of what we decide on that. Now, the press releases as far as the newspapers and all those kind of things are different because those are automatically generated. When we make an arrest, the arrest reports and those type of things, once their name is plugged into our system at the detention center, once they book them in the detention center, then those names are automatically generated and sent to the media for a press release on the arrest. But as far as investigations and things we're doing, those things are not always press release. So it's important that people understand that there's a lot more of that stuff that happens in Cherokee County than people realize happens, because they don't always see the press release on it.
Right. I think with just the quantity that you do release to public, the public knows that you're staying pretty busy. You're trying to keep on top of things.
Right.
And of course, you have your detention center website that a lot of people log in there several times a day just to see who has been arrested.
They do.
And you can sort that by the last 5 days, the last day, or just view all the inmates currently in custody.
Right.
And I know several people that do check that page very often.
Yeah. I have people call me that says, I see you're holding so-and-so for another county, or this person's been arrested for this or that. What happened here? You know, a lot of our officials, our commissioners, county managers, people of authority and people in positions sometimes will see these things and call and ask questions about why this person was arrested or who we're holding for and those kind of things. So a lot of people do check that, and I think we'd be surprised how many people really do check that in a day's time.
Right. All right. And another presentation that I wasn't there to, what was a church safety.
Right.
We've been seeing so many unnecessary violent acts, and people, the bad guys, we'll call them, will oftentimes they look for vulnerable places that can't fight back, like schools.
Right.
I mean, elementary schools. Why would anybody, unless they're just an evil person or mentally unstable, go and attack an elementary school or a church? So you had this presentation about how churches can stay safe.
Right.
Can you tell us about how that went, or offer some advice to churches?
We really had a good first meeting. There was probably over 100 people at this first event. I think we counted like 102 or 103 when we were getting ready to start, and then more people were still coming in the door. So I'd say we probably had around 110 or so. But what we're trying to develop here and what we're trying to discuss is, how do you make your churches safe and be safety minded and cautious about things, but yet still be open and inviting to the public.
Right.
We don't want churches, or at least for my church, I can't speak for others, but churches in general don't want to be so scared of the public and so scared of what might happen that we don't have an open atmosphere and welcoming to people. We want people to walk in off the street. We want people to come in and worship with us and be a part of our service. So, when you keep those things in mind, we don't want to have security guards at the door searching people when they come in. We don't have metal detectors,
Yeah, that's one thing I hate.
And all those kind of things.
I hate going to the courthouse and having to go through that metal detector each time, but I know it's necessary for that kind of environment.
Right. So what we're developing, and as far as this safety training that we're doing, is teaching church staff and safety groups and people who, security teams and things of that nature of churches, is how to spot some of the issues, how to address some of these issues, how to deal with some of these issues, but yet not be like people's walking into a confinement facility. Be open and welcoming to people, but yet be aware of your surroundings and some of the things that are going on. And so we discuss things such as setting a safety plan, doing some proactive things as far as security of the church, as lighting and alarm systems and camera systems and all those kind of things. Greeters and security teams, addressing people as they come through the door, kind of some do's and don'ts with that. We talked about some parking lot perimeter security, people out in the parking lots, greeting people as they're coming in, helping people out of their cars, and walking them into church, holding umbrellas for them when it's raining, some different things you can do from parking lot detail. But have a kind of an ulterior motive to that too, that you're kind of viewing who's doing what in the parking lot. So hopefully if you have someone coming with a weapon, you can encounter that person in a parking lot and address that there before they ever make it into the building. So, those are just some different topics we've talked about. We talked about everything from carrying concealed weapons in churches, so what you can do and can't do with that. Some options with that as far as allowing everyone to carry concealed, allowing everyone to carry openly, to no one carrying openly or no one carrying concealed, to letting security teams be the only one that's carrying concealed. And how do you accomplish that, by writing policies and procedures and posting things in your doors and all those kind of things. So there's some different involvement with that as far as security details. And so we're just trying to develop a plan to present to the churches. This training is not to tell a church what to do or how to do it. All this training is to lay out options and say these are possibilities that you can do. And then it's up for those individual churches to decide what's appropriate for my church. What do we want to do here? And so you may have one church that wants to have a full-blown security team that's armed and carrying weapons. You may have another church that doesn't want that. They don't want a security team. They don't want weapons in their church. You may have another church that openly allows concealed carry and lets all their congregants and members come in and carry concealed weapons. You may have a different church that posts their doors, no concealed weapons allowed, and don't allow anybody with weapons. So there's a lot of different variances and things you can do with this. We just try to present the options to the churches. And then what we do is we talk about what happens during an event, how to deal with law enforcement and first responders in the case that you have an event. And when we talk about the event, it's more than just a shooter. We're talking about natural disasters. You know, if you're in church on Sunday morning and a ice storm hits and no one can leave, if a tornado was to come through and you're trapped in the building, you know, and people are coming to rescue. Part of this training is how to deal with the first responders and how to deal with people who's coming to help you. And then there's another component to the training that talks about the aftermath, is after the event's over with, what are we going to do? What kind of plans are we going to set forth to get you back into your church, to get counseling and to get people who may need small group counseling or one-on-one individual counseling, or is your church viable to come back to? You know, if you have a mass shooting in your sanctuary, is it even a place that your church members want to come back to? So if it's not, then what are you going to do? What kind of alternative plans are you going to have in place for that? You know, so we talked about everything from reunification sites to if you have to run, where are you going to go to counseling, to dealing with first responders. I mean, there are just 100 different things to discuss in this. And honestly, you can't cover all that in an hour or two. Just kind of hit the highlights with it. But what we've done is this first presentation was just a generalized presentation. And so what we're inviting churches to do now is, if your church wants an individual specialized plan for your church, then you can contact me at the sheriff's office and we'll put you down a date and time. We will come out to your facility and meet with you and your staff at your facility. And we can do that church-wide, meeting with all your church members at the same time, or just the pastor, just the deacons, just the security team. Whoever you want to be involved in that. It doesn't matter if there's 100 or if there's just one or two. We'll come out and meet with you. And we can talk about how to set those plans together and do risk assessments and all those kind of things for your churches. So, and this not only applies to churches, but also to businesses and different things that there may be a group of people around. So we just invite people to call and schedule that.
Suppose, and let's say, we hope this never ever happens locally, but suppose there is an active shooter in a church or a business locally.
Right.
What is the best way, or some of the best ways, to protect yourself and try to neutralize the shooter?
Well, there are three different schools of thought on this, and they teach the run, hide, fight mentality. And so the first option is run. They interviewed, since Columbine, they started developing these safety plans, and they've changed over the years. They've evolved into different plans, and even the school system changes from time to time as what they teach the children to do. But what they've done is they've interviewed people who survived shootings and said, okay, how did you survive? What did you do that got you out of this event alive? And so what they found is, more often than not, people survive the event by simply running, by escaping. And so one of the things they teach on there is to run, and then where you come into reunification sites, where you're going to run to, how to get others out of the building, how to help others run, what the do's and don'ts of that. But there's times you can't run. There's times you could be trapped in a room and the shooter's outside the room. So what do you do in events you can't run? Well, your next option would be to hide. That would be to turn off lights and close blinds and lock doors and barricade doors and things of that nature, and turn your cell phones off and be quiet and sit in a room and try to wait for the event to pass before you come out, and not to leave until a first responder, a law enforcement officer, your security team, someone comes and gets you. But what they found is they used to teach hide first, And what they found was that didn't work as a first option, because a lot of these things that were happening was people were just sitting in a room and waiting until the shooter came in and killed them. So hide don't need to be your first option, but it is an option in the event you can't run. And then your last option is to fight. And so if a shooter comes into the room, you're hiding, you're trying to run, whatever it may be, or you just encounter a shooter face to face and you don't know what to do at that point, you can't do either of the other two, then this option is to fight that shooter. And so what we teach is what weapons are readily available to fight with. And so when you think in a church setting, you've got things like songbooks, you've got things like candle stands, you've got things like microphones and microphone stands and flags and
maybe a can of wasp spray.
Maybe a can of wasp spray, or what's in people's purses, keys, lollipop, sticks, whatever it may be that you can find to fight with. So we teach what to be looking for to fight for your life. But the important thing to realize is that when a shooter, and you talk about deflecting that and preventing that from happening, or what to do in the event that it happens, more often than not, a shooter is expecting a victim just to be a victim.
Right.
They're not expecting an encounter. They're not expecting personal one-on-one encounter with a person. They're just expecting a sitting duck victim.
Especially when they pick such vulnerable places like schools and churches.
Right. So when we go back to talking about greeters and we talk about parking lot attendants and those type of things, those are probably the number one positions that are readily available to prevent a shooting from happening more than anything else you can do. And the reason being is if a shooter comes to a church and he may not have a gun presented, he may have it under his jacket or in his waistband, but he's contemplating, where he's going to go and what he's going to do. Just a simple greeter meeting him at the door and asking him, how you doing today? You live here, where's your family? Those type of things. Those type of conversations sometimes can just be enough to throw him off his game plan. That he didn't expect that. He didn't expect to have a conversation or someone to ask him who he was or where he's from or all those kind of things. So just disrupting his plan a lot of times is enough to cause him to turn around and leave and go somewhere else. Same thing in the parking lot. If you have somebody walking through a parking lot acting strange and you have someone encounter them in the parking lot and ask them these same type of questions and offer assistance and help and those kind of things, sometimes that's enough just to disrupt them to the place of that I wasn't expecting this. Now I've got to go somewhere and regroup, So they leave and try to figure out if this is something I really want to do or not. And the same thing about fighting, and we're talking about songbooks and things like that. When you have someone that comes in that's actively shooting, they're not expecting someone to fight back. So if you don't have a weapon, if you don't have a gun to fight back with, just simply a group of people throwing songbooks at a person and throwing them in the air and throwing them at him is sometimes enough to disrupt his thought process as to what his intent was doing. He didn't expect that.
It may knock a gun out of his hand.
It may do it, or it may just disrupt him to the place of that he runs, because he wasn't expecting people to fight back. And so one thing we always teach in that planning, though, is if you're going to fight as though your life depends on it, because it does. And so at that point that you're having to fight, he's already determined, he or she is determined that they're going to hurt you and they're going to take your life. So you have to fight with everything you have. But the other thing about churches and businesses that we have to talk about, and as far as this planning, is senior citizens in churches, small children, the handicapped, the disabled. So, when you talk about planning and what are we going to do if this happens, we have to take our other church members into consideration and what kind of planning are we going to do for those people. Because if you're wheelchair bound, if you're a small child, if you've got disabilities, you may not be able to run. You may not be able to hide. And so we have to figure out what are we going to do about that population of our church. And we're going to have to figure out about small kids, classrooms and things. We've got Sunday school going on. In the event that it happens during Sunday school time, what is our protocol for those teachers with a group of kids? What do we expect those teachers to do with those kids, and what is our plan for that? So, there's just a million things to talk about, and we can't prepare for everything that happens. But it's good to talk about it and have some sort of plan in the event that it does happen.
From a media perspective, we're pretty active on not only radio but social media with video, pictures.
Right.
One thing I would like to make sure that churches understand that it is very important, if in the event that happens and should the shooter escape and drive away, I have to think about Dillon Roof.
Right.
They had good security cameras with very good image.
Right.
And if you have cameras that record the tag numbers and pictures of cars, that really helps in apprehending.
It does.
The person who is shooting. I'm thinking if that church did not have cameras, if we didn't know what he looked like, what he drove,
right,
he would have gotten away likely with murdering all those people in Charleston.
Pretty likely, and he probably would have done it again somewhere else. But like I say, all those things are things that's up for discussion when you discuss church security. And we don't, like I say, we don't want to get so security minded that we become afraid to have worship service or afraid to have church. But the whole purpose of this is just be aware of your surroundings and be aware of what's going on around you. Look for some proactive and preventative things you can do, but also kind of understand the process in the event that your church is the next church that this happens. How to deal with that, how to proceed with the plans and those type of things. And we talked about everything from developing jump boxes or jump drives that has your church plans, your blueprints on it, of your church buildings, your safety plans that you have in place, your camera systems and passwords and all those type of things. During the event there is a shooter and you run, you can take this, either a jump drive or a jump box or something with you, to where when law enforcement arrives, you can hand it to law enforcement, and then they have resources and tools that they know what's happening inside that building, how that building's laid out, and things of that nature. So, like I say, we could really take what we did Monday night and probably make a half a day or a day's worth of seminar out of what we talked about Monday night. So, it's something that we'll do again in the future. But what we're inviting people to do is, especially after the first of the year, go ahead and schedule your church a time and a place that we can come out to your facility and talk to you. And that way we can talk to you about how to do the security planning, how to do the safety risk assessments, how to do these things. And then we can leave it in your hands to develop your own plan. But we can just give you the options on how to put that plan together.
And the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office is 837-2589. That's 837-2589. We realize we have a lot of church members that listen to our station.
Right.
So if you want to jot that number down and get with Sheriff Palmer, and that would be a great thing to develop. It's just like the event of, not just like, but such as an event as your church catches on fire. You need to know where all the exits are, how to escape safely, and this is another disastrous situation.
And like I say, this safety planning that we're doing goes beyond just an active shooter. It goes into those natural disasters and things that can happen, whether it is a tornadic event or whether it's a fire or emergency situation, someone's having a heart attack in your service, whatever it may be. We can do planning for all those things, and we'll touch on all those things as far as your safety planning. So just know that it goes far beyond just a shooter in a church.
Right. And it's one of those things that the more you know, the more you can prepare for something, and hoping it doesn't happen, the better you are. It's never bad to prepare for the worst. And I always remember the company I used to work for in Raleigh, Capital Broadcasting, they had a big sign on the wall, knowledge is power. Right. So the more you can know, the better you are.
You're right. You're right about that. One other thing I do want to mention before we go is that I didn't go to the Wednesday thing with Roger because we were doing our final practice dress rehearsal for our cantata that we're performing this weekend at Valleytown. So we'll be doing that Saturday night at 6 o'clock at Valleytown for anybody that wants to come and view that. And we'll also be doing it Sunday morning for the Sunday morning service this weekend. And then Sunday night, I will be at Abundant Life Church in Peachtree doing the service there for their Christmas service there at Sunday night in Peachtree at Abundant Life. So if anybody wants to come out and take part in those events, we'd love to have you. And I'll be bringing the sermon there on Sunday night at Abundant Life. So if anybody would like to come out and take part of that, I'd appreciate it.
Are you going to be singing?
I will be on Saturday night and Sunday morning.
All right.
Yeah.
So go hear the sheriff sing and deliver a message.
There you go.
Valleytown, let's see, Saturday at 6, and then Sunday at 11, and then Abundant Life.
Saturday night at 6.
Saturday at 6 at Abundant Life.
Sunday night at 6.
Sunday night at 6, the Sunday evening service at Abundant Life, and that's in Peachtree.
Right.
All right. Well, Sheriff, thank you very much for being here. Anything that we did not cover that we meant to have covered?
I'm sure there is.
Yeah, we could talk for hours probably. Right. But all right, it's WKRK Radio in Murphy. Thanks for being with us, Sheriff, and we'll do this same time, same place next week right here on WKRK in Murphy.